The earliest known purpose-built weapons in human history date to the Bronze Age. Maces, which were little more than rocks mounted on sticks, had questionable value as hunting tools, but they were superbly suited for smashing the bones and skulls of other humans. Later in the Bronze Age, the sword made its first appearance. Since that time, weapons have been refined to maximize the killing potential of the wielder while minimizing the ability of one's opponent to retaliate. Perhaps the apotheosis of this trend is the armed drone, an unmanned aerial vehicle that can loiter at high altitudes for hours before firing a missile at its target. In such cases, the drone operator might be on the other side of the world, and the act of killing appears to be as impersonal and unreal as a video game. From rocks to rockets, the weapons of war have changed over time, but a few stand out as revolutionary for their killing power. Maxim machine gun. The 19th century saw a revolution in firearms technology. Machine tools allowed for greater precision in gunsmithing. Misfires became less common with the introduction of the percussion cap and cartridge ammunition. Smokeless powder burned more cleanly and evenly than black powder, and gunsmiths were quick to realize the potential of utilizing a weapon's recoil to increase its rate of fire. Hiram Maxim was the first inventor to incorporate all of these innovations into a single weapon. The Maxim gun, developed around 1884, was a recoil-operated, belt-fed, water-cooled machine gun that fired more than 500 rounds per minute at an effective range of more than 2,000 yards. Maxim was an outspoken and effective advocate for his weapon, and armies across Europe adopted some version of the Maxim in the years before World War I. Versions of Maxim's gun were ubiquitous on the Western Front. When matched against outdated infantry tactics, their killing power was astonishing. In just one day of the First Battle of the Somme, more than 20,000 British soldiers were killed in bloody and ineffective charges against entrenched German defenders armed with MG-08s, the German variant of the Maxim. Nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapons are the elephant in the room when the deadliest weapons in history are being discussed. The proliferation of nuclear weapons has provided humankind with the ability to inflict upon itself the sort of extinction-level event that was previously achievable only by straying into the path of an asteroid. The atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, killed 70,000 people initially, with tens of thousands more succumbing to radiation sickness over subsequent months and years. Shock cavalry. Few military advances fundamentally altered European society more than the rise of shock cavalry. The ascendancy of the mounted knight was the result of an accumulation of technological innovations over hundreds of years. The war saddle had been introduced by the 6th century, and the iron stirrup, often mistakenly credited as the single invention that enabled heavy-mounted warfare, was common by the 7th. The curb bit, necessary for controlling a warhorse, probably dates from about the same time. Iron horseshoes date from the end of the 9th century, and spurs had begun to appear in the 11th. By the 12th century, these factors had combined with increases in the size and power of warhorses and steady improvements in personal armor to place the mounted knight at the apex of the European battlefield. Greek fire. Stand-up legend George Carlin distilled the concept of the flamethrower in this way. "Gee, I sure would like to set those people on fire over there, but I'm way too far away to get the job done. If only I had something that would throw flame on them." The first people to effectively weaponize Carlin's chain of thought were the Byzantine Greeks, who created a composition known to history as Greek fire. The composition of Greek fire was such a closely guarded secret that its exact formula remains unknown, but its effectiveness in combat likely prolonged the life of the Byzantine Empire. A modern version of Greek fire, napalm, first saw use during World War II. Incendiary bombs containing napalm were among the ordnance used in the Allied bombing of Dresden, on February 13 to 15, 1945, and the firebombing of Tokyo on March 9 to 10, 1945. The former killed at least 25,000 people and destroyed one of Europe's great cultural centers, while the latter killed at least 100,000 civilians, a total that exceeded the initial death toll of Hiroshima and razed half of the Japanese capital. Critics deemed these attacks to be war crimes, but Allied planners defended them as essential to the overall war effort. Submarine. Early submarines were far more lethal to their own crews than they were to their intended targets. The Confederate submarine H.L. Hunley sank repeatedly before its successful spar torpedoing the Union sloop Housatonic. Even this success must be qualified, however, as the attack resulted in the Hunley sinking again, with the loss of all hands. By the late 19th century, advances in gasoline engines and electric motors had addressed the issue of propelling the boat above and below the water, and design improvements had greatly bolstered the seaworthiness of the craft. By World War I, all major naval powers were employing submarines in their fleets, but German U-boats would unquestionably have an outsized influence on the war's outcome. U-boats sank more than 10 million tons of Allied shipping, and Germany's practice of unrestricted submarine warfare, most notably the sinking of the British liner Lusitania, contributed to American entry into the war. U-boats assumed much the same role during World War II, when they very nearly severed Britain's vital lifeline with the United States.